Hey, what's going on? Seth here from REtipster.com. Wanted to give you a little update on just something I've been up to this year. One of many things I've been working on. If you know anything about me, you know that, kind of my bread and butter in real estate investing is the land business. I've always loved that business model for a lot of reasons. It makes a ton of sense. But for all the things that land is great for, there's also a few drawbacks. And I think one of those drawbacks is that when you're buying and selling land for cash, it tends to be rather spiky in revenue. Like you might have a month or two that's just awesome, and then a few months that make like nothing. And one way you can mitigate that is to get into seller financing and sell a lot of your properties on terms. And that can make a ton of sense, but there's some drawbacks to that as well. Like for example, the paperwork and the legalities get a lot more complicated depending on what state you're in. You gotta worry about collecting payments, and then if and when borrowers stop paying you, you gotta chase after them. And then even if everything goes like perfectly well, that means that at some point in the future, that stream of income is guaranteed to stop because they're going to pay off. While seller financing can certainly help smooth out your income and be really instrumental in a lot of ways, it's not perfect. There's issues that come into play with that too. And something that I've always wanted is to buy properties that I can just keep for the rest of my life, and they're going to throw off income for as long as I live. And so that's why I've always tried to take some of the profits from my land deals and put them into rental properties. And so up until this year, that's kind of what I've been doing. But you know what? Surprise, surprise, rental properties have their issues too. Like maintenance requests and tenants who stop paying and property managers that don't do their job. And unless you have like a bunch of rental properties to kind of support each other, you'll have these issues where, you could have totally smooth sailing for most of the year, and then all of a sudden you get hit with like, oh, we got to get a new furnace, or oh, we have to replace this roof. And it just totally sabotages your cash flow for the whole year. So it's kind of like unpredictable, and you can't really rely on it unless you have just a massive portfolio of rentals. And that's always kind of bugged me too. So something that I learned about earlier this year from my friend Keith Weinhold over at Get Rich Education is this company called International Coffee Farms. And what they do is they work with investors to acquire underperforming coffee farms or even plots of land that aren't being farmed at all. And then they turn them around and develop them so that they are producing high quality specialty coffee, which is like top notch, like the best kind of coffee beans you can get. And the way this works is I, as an investor, can take a big chunk of cash and invest in a half-acre parcel of land that will then be converted into this coffee farm. And currently the price for buying one of these half acres is $18,000 plus $900 to pay like property transfer taxes in Panama. So it's $18,900 to buy a half acre. And that might sound like ridiculously expensive for a half acre of land. And it is, but you also got to realize this money is not just buying the land. It's going to fund the startup costs for this new farming operation. It's going to be buying equipment and all the things that they need to start this coffee plantation. It's going to be paying local Panamanian farmers a decent, fair wage. It's going to buy seedlings that they can plant. And basically the way this works is International Coffee Farms has put together these projections based on comparable farms and the prior experience of the people that run the company. And according to those projections, these investment dollars that I put into this parcel of land are supposed to earn somewhere in the neighborhood of like 12% annually over the course of 20 years. And that's an average, because a key component of the way this works is in the first few years after they've started this coffee farm, it doesn't produce anything, like zero. Because the trees that produce these coffee cherries aren't big enough yet, and they're not actually producing any harvest yet. So it takes a few years for these farms to actually start producing, but then when they do, the production goes up and up and up. So while like in the first few years, they might be making like basically nothing, in the last few years of that 20-year projection, it's making like 20% return. So when you average all that out, it comes out to around 12%. And then when you go beyond the 20 years, nobody knows what's going to happen that far off in the future. But theoretically, as long as International Coffee Farms still exists and is still producing a harvest, that return is going to just stay there again and again and again, year after year. So there's a few things that I really, really like about this idea, and there's a few drawbacks too. The things that I really like about it is that this kind of investment isn't just good for me, it's actually good for the local farmers in Boquete, Panama, that are going to be working the farm. It's going to provide them a decent, honest working wage, and it's really going to help improve the lives of the people down there that might otherwise not have a very good employment opportunity or like zero employment opportunities. So it's something that's actually like good for the world and good for the environment. This is an environmentally sustainable farming operation. I also like the fact that the way this works is the property gets titled to my name. So I literally own it and I can go down there and visit it whenever I want. It's just that there is an agreement with International Coffee Farms to be the turnkey farming operation that works the land. So I own it, but they have the rights to work it and do their thing on that property. Also, once I've put my investment dollars into this property and I own it, there's like literally no other expenses that I have to pay. Any annual property taxes or assessments or anything like that that may exist down there in Panama are covered by the revenue from the farming operation. Something else I really like about this idea is that the demand for coffee is not going away anytime soon, and the demand exceeds the supply. So these coffee beans are pretty much sold before they're even grown. And I also like the fact that this is really not tied to the US real estate market at all. So, if we hit another 2008 and everything just goes horribly wrong and all of our properties lose half their value, that doesn't really matter with the investment down here in Panama because it's continuing to produce a harvest. The coffee beans are continuing to be sold. It really has nothing to do with what values are doing in the US. So I really like that it's a good opportunity to diversify into things that really are not tied to what's going on here in the US real estate market. In my situation, I chose to own my parcel in the name of my self-directed Roth IRA. And I think for a lot of reasons, this is actually like the perfect fit for a self-directed Roth IRA because it doesn't require a lot of ongoing movement or transactions. You literally just put the money in and then you collect the annual payments that come back to it. So there's not like upkeep and annual tax bills or any of that annoying stuff you have to take care of. Now, in terms of the downsides of this kind of investment, there's a few of them and they're pretty important to be aware of. First of all, this is not the kind of property that you can go out and obtain financing for. So you can't play that whole debt game that we typically do with the rental properties in the US where you only put down like 10 or 20 or 25% and then you can borrow the rest. If you want to invest in this kind of coffee farm opportunity, you basically have to have all the cash and liquidity up front to pay with it, either in an IRA or your personal bank account. And if you can't come up with those funds, then you can't play. So that's kind of how it works. And for obvious reasons, for a lot of people, that's kind of a downside because you can't use other people's money to maximize your return on the cash you're investing. Another downside is that, like I said, it produces pretty much no cash flow for the first few years after you've invested. So you kind of have to be okay with that. And if you do have a problem with it, then you probably shouldn't be doing this. It's also one of those investments that there's no quick exit strategy. Like, this is not the kind of thing you want to do if your goal is to buy it and flip it quick for a profit. That's just not how this works. Like, if you're not planning on having all this money tied up and inaccessible for at least like 3 to 5 years, then you shouldn't invest your money here. In a very real way, I'm trusting this farming operation in Panama to do their job and do it well. And not just today, not just tomorrow, but like for the next 20 plus years. And I mean, honestly, nobody can guarantee that's gonna happen. There's a certain element of trust that I'm putting on the shoulders of those farmers and the farming operation as a whole. Because if they don't do their job, then the harvest doesn't produce as planned. It's another one of those things that like, you just have to be comfortable with that. So anyway, just want to let you know about that. It's something I've been doing that I think is really just kind of cool and fascinating. And like I said, there's some upsides and some downsides to it. It's not for everybody, and I'm not telling you that you need to do this. I'm just letting you know this is what I've been up to. With that being said, though, if you are interested in this kind of thing, I'm going to have a link to the International Coffee Farms website. They also have cacao farms that's a little bit different, a little bit more expensive. It's just a different type of crop, and it's actually in Belize. So if you want to check that out, feel free to. I'm actually probably going to be investing in that as well in the next couple of years, but I wanted to start with the coffee farms and just see how that goes. But definitely check that out if you want to. The REtipster blog does have an affiliate relationship with these guys, so just be aware of that. We get a pretty small commission if anybody clicks through those links and signs up and ends up investing in something. So I just want to be totally upfront about that. I will say one of the things you can do with these coffee and cacao farms is go and visit your property in person. They have a few times a year when investors can come down hang out, taste coffee that was grown on their land. It's a pretty cool thing. I haven't done that yet. I don't know when I'm going to, but I would really, really love to do that at some point in the future. If this is something you are interested in, let me know. Maybe we can coordinate a time to all go down to Panama together and hang out for a little bit. If I ever do end up doing that, I'll be sure to post something here on the blog and kind of document the experience after the fact to let you know how it went. But yeah, that's it. I just want to let you know about that. It's something that I think is pretty cool, and I'm excited to see what ends up happening here. So thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.